Non-stop Vikings talk. It's Purple Daily on Score North and ScoreNorth.com. Purple Daily, presented by Surly Brewing Company.
Reckless speculation.
Yep, it is Vikings speculation season. For any fans who checked out right after the disappointing loss to the Giants, all right, football season's over. I'm going to cleanse my palate.
No.
Don't bail now. Don't bail now, man. This is, you go.
It's getting
good.
Right
into it, right into how to fix things, make things better. You can take time off in June, fans. Not just the Vikings front office, fans.
Yeah.
You don't take time off now. You're needed right now. From now until the draft.
The day after the 3-day mandatory minicamp ends, you can check out for a while.
Pretty good move by me then to book 2 vacations over the next 6 weeks. So I'm glad I locked those in already. So good to know. Good to know.
Well, Declan's always great at looking at the sports calendar. And
I did avoid the tampering period this time.
I hope so.
And so I'm back. Unless I'm doing it from an airport at midnight, which we could honestly do. We should be fine there. I think Vegas airports are very equipped for those type of things. But I will be back before the tampering period.
Phil's got a stamp that says vacation denied. So you better check with Phil before you make these trip
It's
plans.
Unspoken. I won't ever deny it, but I'll condescend.
Let me look at this vacation.
You can take all the vacation you want. I think April is kind of a month, like the 3 weeks before the draft are kind of a dormant period because we've already fleshed out all the draft stuff. And definitely May, June, July, great vacation times. Otherwise, you never know when news might break at any time. Got to be head on a swivel.
Late May, you start the OTAs. Is that
the schedule comes out too.
Is that really a great time to leave, Phil?
I don't think vacations just aren't allowed.
You got July 1st through July 5th. Then get your ass back because it's football season.
This is a bonus episode here on a Tuesday of Purple Daily. We gave you reckless Vikings draft speculation with our guy Thor Nystrom, which we will do every week. Just a deep dive with one of the most foremost draft authorities in the country, Thor Nystrom. But this is Purple Daily, presented by our friends at TCL. Redefine creativity with the TCL 30V 5G smartphone. Enjoy blazing fast 5G speed and AI-powered 50-megapixel triple camera system. Ultra-realistic and true-to-life visuals, powered by Next Vision, and booming sound from the dual speakers. Learn more at TCL.com. In a brief moment, I'm going to tell you why I think the Vikings should trade Danielle Hunter in the next few weeks. One of the greatest pass rushers in Vikings history.
I think we might fight about this, but I can't wait to hear it. I'm very excited to hear it.
Before we fight about this, why don't you tell the audience how to lose weight?
Well, it's a perfect transition because we're talking about how I got in fighting shape. And look at the guy on the left. He's not in fighting shape. He's too chunky. The guy
on the left got his ass kicked on the playground. The guy on the right, however.
The guy on the right.
You don't want those hands.
He had a date to prom. He was the coolest cat. And you know what? He was much, much skinnier. In fact, 40 pounds down, and that is thanks to my friends at Livia Weight Control Centers. And yes, I said weight control centers. I did not say diet plan. I did not say fad. Most importantly, I did not say quick fix, because what you are going to get is a solution that's going to help you lose weight quickly and easily, and then most importantly, keep that weight off. That's the most important thing. You'll feel great. Join now. Get the special Judd offer. You're saying, what's that? I'm telling you, the Judd offer, mention my name and Score North, 50% off. 50% off. There's a lot of people in the PD family right now that can tell you about the success that they've had since I've started talking about this program. And do you know why that is? Because it works. 50% off, 855-GO-LIVIA, livia.com, livea.com, if you want to become the latest to drop the pounds.
Okay. If we're going to fight about this, let's just get into it.
Reckless speculation.
I think the Vikings should trade Danielle Hunter sometime in the next 2 months. The league year opens up in the middle of March. We're sitting here about 6 weeks away from it. Let's start real quick with what is Danielle Hunter. So we know what he used to be before the injuries. Let's see if we can agree on sort of what he is now before we get into why I think they should trade him. So he had, despite maybe not flashing as much as we expected or putting up the gaudy sacks, he still wound up with 10 sacks, 10, 11 sacks. He had the 6th most pressures of any edge rusher in the NFL, playing in a totally new scheme.
Yes.
He had the 4th most stop tackles of any edge rusher in the NFL. A stop equals a failure for the offense. So they fail on 3rd down or they get stuffed on 2nd down. He still is one of the 6 to 10 best edge rushers in the NFL. And he probably got better as the season went along too. I think by the end of at the beginning of the year, Zadarius Smith was their best edge. Yeah. By the end of the year, Danielle Hunter was. Do we agree that he is still, maybe he's not in the running for the best edge rusher, but he's firmly in that next tier as one of the 6 to 10 edge rushers that you would
yes
look to have on your team?
He serves a role that is very, very hard to find. And, keep in mind, the Vikings have gone years without guys like this.
Yep. So here's the thing. The Vikings, and I think a lot of fans, have become so obsessed with just this like short-term, what's right in front of your nose. How can they pull some cap magic to free up enough space to go get like a Chandon Sullivan or an aging Patrick Peterson? How do they fix the situation right now to put together a team and cobble it together to limp into the playoffs or not and get smoked by the Giants or the Niners a few years ago, right? That's the mode that they've been in. And so you could very easily justify, and we did this exercise on Purple Daily last week, get rid of these 5 guys, Darius gone, Jordan Hicks gone, Eric Kendricks gone, Thielen, whatever. Here's $40 million in cap space for this year. Let's push forward. Danielle Hunter is 28 years old. He's still in his prime. See what damage you can do this year. I just don't think with a first-place schedule, with a defense that's going to be completely rebuilt with probably some players that don't even like belong as starters. I don't know how you're going to patch like half your defensive starter spots, even with cap space. I am more interested in what I would call the Jefferson, Darisaw, Hawkinson window. Those are on offense. Those are 3 prime guys who are among the best at their position. Jefferson, I think, is the best. Darisaw is like a top 5 left tackle. Hawkinson's a top 5 pass-catching tight end. They're all between the ages of 23 and 25 right now, and they're all going to be on long-term deals, assuming they don't like force their way out. Hawkinson's going to resign. You're going to get Jefferson locked up. So you have a window with those cornerstone pieces to your offense going forward. Yep. You might say, well, yeah, so you want to milk Danielle Hunter for the remaining years of his prime. Here's the problem. Old Macadac did some research. Like, what is age 28 for an edge rusher? It blew me away what I found a couple nights ago when I was looking this up. For modern edge rushers, so forget about like the Reggie Whites of the old days where you could quarterbacks weren't mobile, like the game was not as athletic. You could still be those old purple people eater defenses. Those guys were collecting sacks in their early 30s, right? Reggie White with the Packers is like 33 years old. That is not how the NFL works in 2018, 19, 20, 21. The cliff for elite edge rusher play is age 28, age 29 now. That's the age where one of 2 things happens for the Danielle Hunters of the world. Number 1, they completely fall off a cliff. Or number 2, which is the more likely scenario, they move from the elite category to the pretty good still category, and they might be able to play for like 3, 4, 5 more years. Von Miller, Khalil Mack, J.J. Watt, DeMarcus Ware, Jared Allen, Chandler Jones. I mean, I could keep going. A list of the premier edge rushers the last 10 to 15 years in the NFL. All of these guys had their last big elite season at age 28 or 29. That's what we're looking at with Danielle here. I'm not saying he can't still play when he's 31 or 32. But in terms of being a dominant top 6, top 7, top 10 pass rusher, it's more likely than not that he has maybe 1 more year left of that. Maybe 2 if you're lucky. But how much do you want to gamble here? And my problem with the Vikings has been they keep running it. They keep stretching it with these veterans, run it back. Well, you could get some trade value for one of these guys a year ago. Not so much anymore. At what point do you start looking further out than, 3 months in front of you? Danielle Hunter could still fetch you a 1st-round pick, maybe a 2nd.
Yeah, but your research sort of disproves that potentially, because are you going to give that, because he's going to want a long-term contract now. See, that's where I sort of run into a problem here. He's got no guaranteed cash left. The last year of his contract in 2023, I would not call player friendly. So I think the question becomes, the team that you might trade him to, what are they going to give you based, because if he comes in and says, I want a 4-year contract, I think the team's going to say no.
Dude,
Like there's a very small
a team that could
window
win a
here
Super
left
Bowl
here.
right now would gladly give him a 4-year contract. They don't care about the last 2 years. If they can get a 1 or 2 years,
But when they give him a first-round
if the
pick, it's
Buffalo
what I'm saying.
Bills or someone could get you, you don't think a contending team would give you, let's say, a second and a third? And by the way, the Rams traded a second and a third for Von Miller,
Mhm.
and they didn't care about. Like, his contract was up, right? It was 1 year and free.
That was
It was
in
a half.
season,
It was
right?
a rent a player.
Yeah, well, and that's a good, but so that's the dynamic that is starting to be explored now, that I find to be a really fun part of this league that previously did not exist, and that is this: do you keep Danielle, sign him, I don't know, to a short-term extension? Because I'm not going to, if I'm the Vikings, I'm not going to give him a long-term extension. And then if you're not doing well at the deadline, trade him then next season.
I could get behind that. I
The
could get behind
in-season
that.
trade has become, look at the players in the playoffs who have made an impact and were acquired at the deadline, which, by the way, kudos, National Football League. This is awesome. But I mean, I could actually see a guy like Danielle, and with his technique, if the Vikings aren't going great, I could see him being almost akin to a pitcher at the trade deadline in baseball.
Another example. So Khalil Mack was 27 when the Bears traded for him. So they traded multiple first-round picks for Khalil Mack a few years ago, and he was a little younger. You know, he didn't miss like 2 seasons because of injury like Hunter did. So I'm not saying that Hunter has the same value as Khalil Mack, but that was a haul. About 10 years ago, the Jets got a first-round pick for John Abraham around the same age. The Vikings traded a second-round pick for Yannick Ngakoue, and then immediately regretted it.
Yeah, you could probably get a second-round pick. Yeah.
So if you're going to keep doing this thing where, all right, we're just going to kind of cross our fingers and hope that we can magically win a Super Bowl, and meanwhile these older players, instead of getting value for them, and people might scoff at like a second or a third, but what if the Vikings last year had traded a couple of these guys? Like, they didn't need Eric Kendricks this year. Their defense would have been 31st with or without Eric Kendricks. Could they have gotten a third-round pick for Eric Kendricks off reputation a year ago? Probably. Or Harrison Smith. This defense could have finished 31st or 32nd
Now
without
you're preaching
Harrison
to the choir.
Smith, without Eric Kendricks, without Danielle Hunter, and they would have had, you know, a second, 2/3, and a fourth in draft pick compensation, and now you're ready to rock, restock the cupboards. So I think they should really consider, if you're looking to get good young players, more good young players in the mix in the next 3 to 5 years, how do you do that? Or do you just ride the Danielle Hunter thing off a cliff the next 2 years to what? Win 9 games against a first place schedule next year, and maybe if you make the playoffs, get bounced in the first round? Like, get off the ride is what I'm saying here. And Danielle Hunter would be one of your most interesting trade assets if you dangled him.
And we agree with that. That's the problem. They won't. Like a year ago, we urged them, stop, like rethink this. You're bringing in new people to set a new course, and yet they won't get off that ride. That's the problem here. And that's with the Wilfs. That's not with Kwesi. That's not with O'Connell. The issue is this team has fallen in love far more than they used to be, I think, has fallen in love with its veterans. Now, the one thing where your scenario might catch a break here, though, is, and we haven't heard this yet, but previously it seemed like for 2 or 3 years, it was always a story. And that is Danielle going to show up for training camp with his contract? Like previously,
probably not. Yeah.
Okay. So now it becomes more plausible, but I'm telling you, I have fallen in love with the idea of in-season trades now, because they're doable, and you're going to get at that point in time, if you find a team, and Danielle's playing well, that needs an edge rusher, and you are in season, and those guys are hard to find, Now I got you. Now I probably can get potentially a first, but for sure a second.
But part of the problem with waiting though is now you're letting another draft go by. Now you're stocking the cupboards into 2024 if you don't make a trade in the next 5 or 6 weeks.
I'm trying to reverse engineer this though from how the Vikings operate. Like I loved the idea last year. Hell, we talked about this. Thielen, Harrison Smith, Kendricks, like their aging is not a surprise. Like it's not like they woke up and like, now I'm old, I can't play it as well. We talked about this on this show, and the Wilfs basically said to Kwesi and O'Connell, the mission here is to win with what we have. And they did in the regular season. And that's the problem. The Wilfs are happy with that. But yes, I don't love the idea of trading him, but there's a lot of things around him that certainly could transpire that would make it worth examining. I just wonder, I guess my question is this: how far are they willing to strip down this defense? Because some of it now is inevitable. It's going to happen.
I think it makes too much sense not to trade him. You can get out of the contract situation. He's not going to report. Teams are going to overpay for him. I think it makes too much sense. The writing is on the wall. You don't have to worry about.
You would trade him?
I would.
Okay.
I would trade him. I would trade him in a heartbeat, to be honest. I think it makes too much sense for them to trade him. They have to trade him. Some team's going to come asking for a pass rusher. It's an elite position. You don't have to worry about paying this guy. And I think the idea of waiting until the trade deadline, if I can get a guaranteed second and that is a conditional first, or even there's more compensation attached in the years after draft, I do that. I do that right now. I think it makes too much sense to trade him, and this defense is not good enough to just rely. Well, keep Danielle Hunter there, who is their best defender, no doubt. Like going into next season, Danielle Hunter is obviously their best defensive player, but also they could get a draft haul for him, and they don't have to pay him. I think it makes a lot of sense to trade him.
You know, I would go look for like teams that are frustrated because they're not competing for a Super Bowl, but they think they should be, that don't get pressure on the quarterback. The Denver Broncos are in too deep with Russell Wilson, especially if they bring Sean Payton on board. Mm-hmm. You know, they had one of the lowest pressure rates in the league last year. I'd call the Broncos. I'd call the Ravens had the 6th worst pressure rate in the NFL last year. They got some sacks, but I would literally call teams, the Chargers. Okay, your defense, could you put another edge rusher on the other side of the field and just go even further into the Brandon Staley era, I guess. Mm-hmm. I would not rule this out because he's Danielle Hunter. He's been here for 8 years.
Oh, I agree.
He is banged up. He missed almost 2 full seasons, and he is about to hit the elite edge rusher age cliff. And if you can get first, second, third round draft capital for him in an edge rusher friendly draft, mind you, and swap him out for a 22-year-old for a lot less money, that's what I would do.
I mean, I like the idea. I'm just talking from how the Vikings work and operate. Unless he says, I'm not showing up, I don't see him doing it.
Why would he show up, though? Don't you have, if you're going to reverse engineer, let's reverse engineer it all the way. Okay.
Yeah,
so
I'm wondering.
He's not going to talk about this. His base salary is like $4.9 million.
Yeah.
He ain't showing up for that.
Well,
so he has to either get a new contract in the next 5 or 6 weeks or in the next 6 months, or you have to trade him. Those are the two options.
If that gets out and that's the case, then yes, I think it becomes much more plausible to trade him. I'm just saying, as things are right now, when Dalvin Cook, I think, is likely gone. Thielen ideally is gone. Kendricks is gone. Harrison Smith's a decision. Patrick Peterson's not going to return. I just wonder how much this ownership group can stomach of moves, because keep in mind, one of the things with Ryan Poles, I heard, was their first choice. And the two things were, Poles basically priced himself out. So the Bears paid him more than the Vikings were willing to. And the second thing was, he wanted to blow it up sky high. And I mean, as you guys know, I'm all for that if it's done right. But the problem is, when you look at how this team works, if you're saying, And I really think that Kwesi has to go to the Wilfs and say, Dalvin's got to be gone. Thielen, I'd like to get out of. Kendricks has got to be gone. Harrison Smith's a discussion for sure. I just don't know how far the Wilfs can go. But if Danielle does call them, or his representatives do, and say, we need an extension, we're not going to show up. Again, the whole off-season program BS. I'm not going to come in and lift weights, and I don't care about that. And I might show up for the 3-day camp. All right. Then you've got a discussion that I think can open an entry point to a potential trade before the draft.
I almost feel like people are sort of misconstruing what like a reset or a rebuild would look like with this collection. Keep in mind, again, the defense with veterans was among the worst in the NFL. So there's nothing to lose by just nuking the defense, including Danielle Hunter, by the way. Like, it can't get much worse. And you'll find other guys will step up schematically. Like, I'm not saying Patrick Jones will be Danielle Hunter, but if you give that dude 1,000 snaps, he'll get some pressures, right? If you draft an edge rusher, you'll find a way to create some pressure. On the offensive side of the ball, you literally have two of the best tackles in the NFL, Brian O'Neill, Christian Darrisaw. You've got two of the best pass-catching weapons in Justin Jefferson and TJ Hawkinson. And as of right now, you also have a top 10 to 12 quarterback in the NFL in Kirk Cousins. So you're sort of like, if you're the Wilfs, you're not going to be that bad. Your schedule might make it tough, but you're not going to totally train wreck with offensive-minded coach, those pieces on offense. You got a decent, set of pillars to build around. And the main ones to build around are all, like I said, between 23 and 25 years old. O'Neill's a little older. He's 26, 27, but he'll play for another 5 more years.
Oh, God, yeah.
So wouldn't you then want to take as much of the rest of the assets in the team and get as young, explosive, fast, athletic, healthy as possible and bring in a bunch of really good players and assets that are between the ages of 22, 23, 21, 22, 23? To me, it's almost like a no-brainer to me that you would do this. Why? Like, what is the only reason why you wouldn't do this is if you're just trying to desperately cling to one more year of Kirk, Danielle.
The known.
Yeah, I guess the known. But what's so bad about the unknown when you've got Jefferson, Hawkinson, Darrisaw, O'Neill? Like, you've got pillars.
So
get younger, more athletic, healthier.
So in their mind, and I'm telling you how they think, because again, I disagree, but in their mind, the known allows them to, for instance, win 13 games in 2022. So that's the known. And then they think, and I mean, this is the flawed thing. They think if we get into the tournament, we have a chance.
And they didn't.
Exactly. But that's the thing. But they say, oh, no, we'll do the same thing next year, potentially. And that's where Kwesi has to step in and say, guys, no, loyalty is great when guys show back up in their suits and ties or their sweats and are on the sideline talking to the VEN sideline reporter. Loyalty is awesome. But when it comes to the actual, okay, we're going to continue to bring these guys back, that's where it becomes a problem. But I mean, there's no question we are now in an era where the Vikings are trying to bring guys back based on how they feel about them, not what the production is. There's no metric. There is no metric available that says you should have ever signed Thielen to that extension.
Then why even have a front office? Then why even hire Kwesi? If that's what, if the ownership is going to meddle on that level and say, hey, we love how innovative you are. We love that you look at this in a different way, like a Wall Street guy would. But here's 6 edicts that you have to stick to.
Right. We want
to
guys
be
back.
our GM. Well, I mean, then they're idiots.
Well,
hire smart people to run your team. Do you think a smart asset manager mind like Kwesi looks at a bunch of aging defenders? He also knows the age cliff thing with edge rushers and running backs and says, more Dalvin Cook, more 29, 30-year-old edge rusher guys. No, he knows. So I think you're right. I think this is where, to me, the grass isn't always greener. It's definitely greener if you do these things. Get rid of old aging players. Bring in young players.
Yes.
Leverage those players for whatever assets you can, even if it's 4th-round picks. Rip the Band-Aid off and see what the future brings.
Across the board, I agree completely. And this also, and I've started to see this already. I see it on Twitter. I see it in columns. and this is the worst part, is already I'm starting to see as far as trying to bring guys back. Rob Brzezinski, their cap guy, will make it work. You know what? Rob is fantastic, and we've talked about Rob before. He's one of the best in the league at what he does. But there's a price to pay, which I'm sure he's told them every time you do that. Every time you kick the, you know what? You can restructure Thielen and you can keep him. Okay, that's awesome. But this whole thing of, but the salary cap's fake is BS. No, it's very real. It catches up to you. And that's the thing is Rob does a great job, but I feel like that's become the, well, he'll make it work, so we should do it. No. At some point in time, somebody has to tell you, we need to clear guys off our books. That might be Cook, Thielen, Smith, go down that entire list. So yeah, I am the Hunter thing. I'd like to see what the return would potentially be. That being said, overall, with what you're saying, Phil, I agree completely. And this has been my thing is this is how you build a new team. This is how you build a team that is going to be different. You don't just replace the coach and GM and say, but we want to keep, these 10 players.
So to put a bow on this, I want to pull the room here. Let's say, just looking at some of the other price tags that we brought up, let's say it's not a first, but let's say it's a second and a third. Someone offers you a second and a third for Danielle Hunter. Yes or no?
A second and third in this draft. So I make the trade before this draft. Yeah,
and it would probably be a contender. So it'd be like a late second, late third.
I don't have a second round pick right now. Yes, assuming that he wants a reworked contract, and I'm going to assume that until we hear that's not the case. If he wants a reworked contract again with my cap situation, actually, I'd probably do it.
I think I'd do it. I'd like a little more compensation, but I'm not going to split hairs for the sake of it. I think I'd probably do this trade as well.
I do it too.
Do it as well.
Yeah.
I don't think you'll get a first. I think you're right about that. Oh yeah, I don't think that you would get a first right now.
So this would leave you with a first, a second, and 2/3 in this year's draft. It would help restock the cupboards.
I will say this about the position he plays though. Like this is one of those that's hard to find.
It is.
So like when we're talking about,
but he's not going to be 23 again. So
right. But I'm just saying, you know what? Cook, see ya. Thielen, see ya. Kendricks, hey, it's been great, but bye. Harrison Smith, who I think is, bye. I mean, Hunter plays a spot where if you're going to replace him eventually, you got to have really good scouts.
Yeah. So we'll see. Some of this stuff will start to materialize in the next few weeks, whether they're going to get into a discussion with him about contract or trade. A shout out to our crazy Cousins Crusaders friends here of Purple Daily. The crazy Canadian Cousins Crusaders reached out a couple months back and said, why don't we bring everyone together here for a good cause? Donating money. Kirk Cousins charity, kirkcousins.org. So we've been asking people on Vikings Vent Line the last few weeks, whether you're a Cousins Crusader or a Cousins hater, if you will, go to his website, his charity website, kirkcousins.org. $5, $50, whatever you got, and put in the little comment that you are one of the Cousins Crusaders of Purple Daily so they know where it's coming from. And also a shout out to our friends at Nutrisource. Maya Mackey was very excited early this morning for her breakfast.
So was Stella.
And she did this thing where she got up on her hind legs and was airboxing with. I'm like, wow, you're doing new physical motions because you love the chicken and rice food from Nutrisource so much.
Yeah. Stella did the same thing. I think she was up at about what was it, 6:15, and said, you know what, Pop, you get downstairs right now and get me my Nutrisource. And then she got up at 7 and said, now it's time for a treat as well. But here's the best part: she went to the vet last week, 12 years young, and the vet said she's in great shape. Digestive health is fantastic, and that's because our friends from Nutrisource have the formula that helps with that. And you know what? If she's healthy and happy, we're happy too. So that's the way to go.
NutrisourcePetFoods.com to find your Nutrisource retailer, NutrisourcePetFoods.com. This has been a bonus episode. Let us know, would you consider the crazy idea of trading a 28-year-old Danielle Hunter? Let us know in the Purple Daily YouTube comment section. Please click the subscribe button and the like button, and we'll see you guys tomorrow on Purple Daily.